Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Awesome. Today, we're going to tackle the Kawasaki Mule SX 2024. It's a compact utility vehicle that's been getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, I've seen it popping up everywhere. It seems like it could be a big deal.
Exactly. So, we dug into a recent article from bikermotorwriter.com.
Nice.
They break down all the details, and we're going to see if this mule lives up to the hype.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so right off the bat, the article hits us with a table of specs. And let me tell you, some of these numbers are pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, first of all, we're looking at a 401cc engine.
Okay. Decent size.
CVT transmission, too, which we'll get into in a bit.
Yeah, CDTs are becoming more and more common these days.
But here's the kicker. Both the payload and towing capacity are 1,100 pounds.
Whoa, that's a lot for a compact, especially at this price point.
Right, and it starts under $7,500.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Yeah, I thought that might pique your interest.
For that price, that's a pretty amazing package. I mean, you usually have to sacrifice something, like you get good towing, but the payload is limited, or the other way around.
I know, right? But the Mule SX seems to be defying those expectations.
Definitely interesting. So you mentioned CVT transmission. For those of us who aren't gearheads, what's the big deal about CVT?
Oh, good point. Some listeners might not be familiar with that term.
Right, like what should we care?
Well, CVT stands for Continuously Variable Transmission. Basically, unlike a traditional automatic with fixed gears, a CVT can adjust seamlessly to different speeds and loads.
So it's constantly optimizing, like finding the perfect gear for the situation.
Exactly. Think of it as constantly shifting, but without those clunky gear changes. It's smooth, efficient, and especially helpful for utility vehicles used for hauling and towing.
Makes sense. Smooth acceleration and less strain on the engine sounds like a win-win.
Absolutely. Now, beyond the transmission, the article highlights 5 key features that Kawasaki is really pushing.
Okay, lay it on me. What are they bragging about?
Well, they're touting the compact and efficient engine, of course.
Right, gotta love fuel efficiency these days.
Then there's durability, which is crucial for a workhorse like this.
For sure. Nobody wants a vehicle that's gonna fall apart after a few tough jobs.
Exactly. They also emphasize its off-road capabilities.
Now that's interesting because I was wondering how it would handle rough terrain.
Yeah, and they back up that claim with a specific feature. The article mentions a dual-mode rear differential.
Okay, now you're talking my language.
I figured you'd appreciate that.
I do. But for our listeners who aren't as familiar with differentials, break it down for us. What makes that special?
So basically, the dual-mode rear differential gives you options. In 2WD mode, the rear wheels spin independently, which is great for smooth surfaces and fuel efficiency.
Okay, makes sense.
But when you hit tough terrain, you can switch to 4WD mode. This locks the rear wheels together, giving you that extra traction to power through mud, snow, or uneven ground.
Ah, so it's like having a secret weapon for when the going gets tough. I like it.
Right. It's a feature you often find on off-road vehicles.
Yeah, that definitely expands the Mule SX's capabilities beyond just paved roads. But I'm curious, how do these features, like the engine and the differential, stack up against the competition?
You mean, are they really raising the bar? Or is this pretty standard for compact utility vehicles these days?
Exactly. Is the Mule SX just meeting expectations, or are they going above and beyond?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Some features, like the 401cc engine, are pretty standard for this class.
Okay, so nothing groundbreaking there.
Not necessarily, but that dual 1,100-pound rating for both payload and towing, that's where the Mule SX starts to stand out.
So they're really hitting it out of the park with the hauling capacity.
You got it. You don't usually find that kind of power in a compact, especially at this price point.
And for people who need to move heavy loads but don't want a huge, expensive vehicle, that's a game changer.
I think so too. So it seems like Kawasaki is hitting some sweet spots with the specs and features, but who are they picturing behind the wheel of this Mule SX?
Yeah, who's the target audience? Farmers, construction workers.
You nailed it. The article talks about farmers, construction workers, even outdoor enthusiasts.
Interesting. So they're aiming for a pretty broad market.
It seems that way. They're really trying to position the Mule SX as a multi-purpose vehicle, a workhorse that can tackle all sorts of tasks.
That's ambitious. I mean, can it really cater to such diverse needs?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we've got the workhorse angle covered, but let's be honest. Some people are going to be eyeing this thing for a little bit of fun too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I can already see myself cruising around some trails.
Me too. But the article mentions 170mm ground clearance. Sounds decent, but is that enough for some serious off-roading?
Hmm, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It'll handle some bumps and dips, but for really rugged terrain, you might want a bit more clearance.
Exactly. And then there's the top speed, which is 25 mph.
Okay, yeah, that's fine for work, but for recreational use, it might feel a little slow.
I was thinking the same thing. So there are definitely some limitations to consider, depending on how you plan to use the Mule SX.
For sure, it's all about finding the right tool for the job, right?
Mhm.
Speaking of comparisons, the article also pits the Mule SX against some of its competitors.
Oh yeah, the showdown. They've got a comparison table with the John Deere Gator TS and the Polaris Ranger 500.
That's perfect because now we can see how the Mule SX stacks up against some established players.
Exactly. So are you ready to dive into that comparison?
Let's do it. I'm eager to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look.
Well, the first thing that jumps out at me is the price. The Mule SX is significantly cheaper than both the Gator and the Ranger.
Yeah, that price difference is pretty hard to ignore. But is that affordability going to cost us in terms of features or performance?
That's the big question, right? Like,
Hmm,
are we sacrificing something to save some money? Well, the Gator TS, for example, has a manual transmission,
okay.
while the Mule SX has that CVT we talked about. Now, some people, they might prefer the control of a manual, right? That direct connection.
Exactly. But for a lot of folks, especially if they're using this for work,
Yeah,
that CVT is going to be a huge plus.
I can see that. Smooth acceleration, no shifting.
Exactly. Less fatigue, especially if you're doing a lot of stop-and-go driving?
Makes sense. Now, what about the Ranger 500? It's pricier, but it also has more towing power. So is that a classic case of you get what you pay for?
It could be. The Ranger 500 is definitely a more powerful machine overall.
Yeah,
And if you're going to be towing really heavy loads on a regular basis, that extra power might be worth the extra cost.
for sure.
But, if you don't need to max out the towing capacity all the time
Right.
and you're on a budget, the Mule SX's 1,100 pounds is still, that's still a lot of towing power.
It's nothing to sneeze at, that's for sure.
Definitely not.
Okay, so it really comes down to individual needs and priorities.
Absolutely.
All right, let's switch gears a bit and talk about design and comfort.
Okay, sounds good.
The article really praises the Mule SX for its blend of ruggedness and ergonomics.
Yeah, that's a pretty ideal combination, right? You want something tough that can handle the job, but you also want to be comfortable while you're doing it.
Exactly. And comfort is often overlooked in utility vehicles, but it can make a huge difference, especially if you're spending hours behind the wheel.
Oh, for sure. A comfortable ride can mean the difference between a productive day and a miserable one.
I couldn't agree more. And the article specifically mentions that the Mule SX has like an optimized seating position. They've designed it to reduce strain on the back and shoulders.
That's smart. Back pain is no joke, especially if you're working long hours.
Right. They even quoted Kawasaki in the article, saying they're really focused on creating a comfortable and supportive driving experience.
That's good to hear. Sounds like they put some real thought into the ergonomics. But beyond the seats, what other design elements contribute to the comfort and ease of use?
Well, the article talks about the spacious cab. Plenty of legroom and headroom for both the driver and passenger.
Okay, that's always a plus. Nobody wants to feel cramped.
Right. And they also mention well-placed controls and like intuitive instrumentation.
So everything is easy to reach and understand.
Exactly. It's those little details that can make a big difference when you're working hard or out on the trails. Less fatigue, more enjoyment.
Absolutely. It's not just about being tough. It's about being user-friendly, too.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about all the good stuff,
Hmm.
the impressive specs, the clever features, the comfortable design.
Right.
But now it's time to face the music, right?
Uh-oh. What's the bad news?
Well, no vehicle is perfect, and the Mule SX does have some drawbacks.
Okay, let's go.
The most obvious one, the elephant in the room, is the limited seating. 2 passengers only.
Yeah. That could be a deal breaker for some people.
For sure. If you need to haul a crew or a whole family, this isn't the vehicle for you.
Nope, you'll need something bigger.
Definitely. And then we already talked about the moderate top speed. 25 mile per hour might be fine for work,
Yeah.
but for recreational use,
It might leave you wanting more.
exactly. Not going to win any races with this thing.
Nope.
And then there's the tech. The article points out that the Mule SX is pretty basic in that department,
Right.
meaning, no fancy touchscreen displays, no advanced infotainment system,
So it's a no-frills workhorse.
pretty much,
Yeah.
which, might appeal to some people, but for those who want all the latest gadgets, it could be a turnoff.
True, some people love those bells and whistles.
Exactly. So I'm throwing this back to our listeners. which of these drawbacks would be a deal breaker for you?
Yeah, think about your needs, how you plan to use the vehicle. It's all about finding the right fit.
Exactly. Okay, let's zip through the FAQ section real quick.
Okay.
This is where the article addresses some common questions that potential buyers might have.
Right.
So they confirm that the Mule SX is beginner friendly,
Good to know.
which is always a plus. It has a 25-mile-per-hour top speed. We covered that. Still has that 1,100-pound towing capacity
Impressive.
and that attractive starting price of around $7,500.
Can't beat that. And you know what? That emphasis on beginner friendliness, I think that's a smart move by Kawasaki.
Oh, how so?
Well, by making it easy to operate and maintain, they're opening up their market to a wider range of buyers.
That makes sense. People who might be new to utility vehicles.
Exactly. They're not intimidated by a complicated machine.
Smart strategy. Okay, so we've unpacked the specs, we've analyzed the claims, we've sized up the competition, and we've even confronted the drawbacks.
Phew, we've been busy.
I know, right? But the big question remains. Is the Mule SX living up to all the hype? What's the verdict?
Well, based on everything we've discussed, I'd say it's definitely a strong contender in the compact utility vehicle market, especially at that price point.
Okay,
It's not perfect, and those drawbacks we talked about, those are real considerations.
of course.
But if your needs align with its strengths, I think the Mule SX offers a really compelling combination of capability, affordability, and user-friendliness.
It sounds like a great option for people who need a reliable workhorse but don't want to sacrifice comfort or, spend a fortune.
Exactly. But as with any vehicle purchase, you got to weigh the pros and cons carefully
Mm-hmm.
and really think about how it fits into your lifestyle and your needs.
Couldn't agree more. And that's what these deep dives are all about, giving you the information you need to make informed decisions. But before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with something to ponder.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So the article focuses heavily on the Mule SX's applications for work and play, right? But let's think outside the box for a moment. Imagine its potential for community projects
Oh, interesting.
or even disaster relief efforts. We talked about its hauling capacity, its durability, its off-road capabilities. Those strengths could be so valuable in situations where you need to get resources moved quickly and efficiently, especially in, tough conditions.
Yeah, definitely. Imagine like a community garden project in a remote area. Maybe access is limited. The Mule SX could easily bring tool supplies, even volunteers to the site. Or after a natural disaster, it could help get essential stuff like food and water and medical supplies to the communities that need it.
Makes you think about it differently, right? It's like not just a workhorse, but a helper.
Exactly. And because it's compact, that makes it even more versatile. Gets into places bigger vehicles can't. Think narrow roads, tight spaces.
Right, so it's not just about lumber or hitting the trails, it's about, actually making a difference for people. That's pretty cool when you think about it.
It is. Shows how a good design isn't just about being a tool. It can actually do good in the world.
So, as always, folks, knowledge is power. We've given you the rundown on the Kawasaki Mule SX 2024, what's great about it, what to watch out for, and what it could really be capable of.
Right, but now it's up to you to take this info and figure out what it means for your situation.
Do your research, maybe even test drive one if you can. And most importantly, think about how this Mule SX, or any vehicle really, could fit into your life, your work, maybe even your community. It's all about finding the right tool for what you need.
Couldn't have said better myself.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive into the Kawasaki Mule SX 2024. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep on learning.